So I'm going to call this video segment Three Strengths of the Open Heart in Love. And so if you are sick of walking on eggshells or chasing after an unattainable partner in your relationships, this is a video that you are going to want to stick around for because I'm going to explain to you how you may be struggling with anxious attachment, again, what I call an open-hearted attachment style, and how you can access three strengths of the open heart to inspire a lover to go from "you're too good for me" to "you make me want to be a better partner." If you don't know me, my name is Briana MacWilliam, and I am a licensed and board certified creative arts therapist, author, and educator, and I've been in the field for about 13 years now. And so, using a psycho-spiritual approach with creative arts interventions, I help individuals struggling with insecure attachment go from feeling fearful and confused to achieving what I call self-sovereignty and calling in those soul-shaking, passionate partnerships that they want without having to talk in circles around their feelings for hours or even years on end with no tangible result. And I use an approach which I call the MAC method, and that stands for mastery, awareness, and creativity. And it's founded upon a principle that self-sovereignty evolves out of a continuous loop between conscious awareness and creative expression. And so this loop uses three practical tools to maintain its momentum, and that is cognitive reframing, body activation, and arts-based experientials. Now, when open hearts are in love, they tend to be pretty desirous of affection, attention. They frequently need a reassurance, and they tend to be approval seeking. And so there's typically an underlying fear of abandonment or rejection, as well as a fear of not being good enough. You might be accustomed to a lack of love in your romantic relationships, and so you tend to fall into people pleasing mode. You might give too much and then wait around a little bit too long for the reciprocation of loving feelings. Maybe you take on more than the lion's share of responsibility, guilt, and or blame in the relationship because you think that if you're responsible for something going wrong, then it must be within your power to fix it. You may have critically low self-esteem and struggle with feelings of unworthiness. Deep down, you might believe that you have to earn love and approval, and so you are drawn to partners that are more challenging or edgy or kind of make you work for it. And on the other hand, if a partner gives you love and affection too freely, perhaps you find them too nice or too boring. By being over helpful, you kind of make yourself indispensable to a partner, and you think, if they need me, they won't leave me. This generally tends to be kind of a double-edged sword because since you've worked so hard to make your partner need you, you always kind of question whether or not they really love you for you. And you probably struggle with knowing who the real you is anyway. And so then you tend to get lost in the potential of the relationship rather than the reality of it. But really, the hardest thing for an open heart is that they usually attract other partners with insecure attachment styles. And so they fall into what's often called the anxious avoidant trap, which is a roller coaster situation, a circumstance where you typically find yourself with a partner that is emotionally unavailable. And that proves your deepest fear, which is that you are unlovable. But I feel like a lot of what is explored in the literature and in other media outlets are typically the problems that anxiety creates. But I want to focus today primarily on the strengths because there are tremendous skills and abilities that evolve as a result of this type of insecure attachment. So on the positive side, open hearts are very affectionate and they give a lot to a partner. They are empathic and they deeply enjoy offering care, solace, and loving support to their partners. You will never feel like anything less than a top priority if your partner is an open heart, because you can rest assured that you are always on your partner's mind. And if you are an open heart, it's likely that others see you as being loyal and compassionate, and they come to you for advice or counsel or insight. And these partners also bring a level of fire and passion and excitement to the relationship, and they are constantly thinking up new ways to entertain and impress you. They are romantic and they notice even the smallest things about their partners, so they are very thoughtful and considerate with their compliments and their gift giving. They have a very endearing ability to make their partners feel seen and appreciated, which also makes them very attractive and easy to be around. They're very forgiving, and they usually are quite committed to working through whatever issues might arise in a relationship. And this can be a lot of fun, and it can lead to creative ways of expressing your love. But it also might tend to foster an element of performance in the relationship. So there may be a need to entertain a partner and please at all times and in all ways because you think you need to maintain a partner's attention that way. And so for the open heart, the challenge is learning when to stop and take off that mask and costume and apply what I think their three greatest strengths are to good use. And that is empathy, generosity, and creativity. So I want to talk a bit about empathy. So, empathy is the art of stepping into the shoes of another person and looking at the world from their perspective. And so, if you have empathy as a significant strength, you probably readily identify with people's situations and you can see things quite clearly from multiple perspectives. You might find it relatively easy to put yourself in someone else's shoes and you appreciate not only what people are saying, but why they are saying it. On the shadow side of this, an open heart can sometimes feel as though their empathy gets them into trouble, okay? Or it weakens their personal boundaries, in love especially. Because if they empathize too deeply with the struggles of their partner, then they too often deprioritize their own needs and desires. But the issue is that's not really empathy. It's really more a form of enmeshment because it starts to dismiss the individuality of yourself and of the other person. And it tends to perceive any disagreement, contrast between you as unempathic or as an abandonment of the relationship. Now, in my experience, there are really three types of empaths, and that is the diffuse empath, the fix-it empath, and the secure empath. And the diffuse and the fix-it empath usually have the most trouble. And how they respond to those struggles usually defines their attachment style as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I do recommend checking out my one-on-one course on anxious attachment through the links in the caption of this video. But for the purposes of today's video, I want to move on to our second strength, and that is generosity. So we think of generosity really as a form of self-sacrifice. But I would say that generosity generates its power from a gesture of letting go. And so while open hearts are really no strangers to giving a lot, they often keep a bit of an invisible scoreboard hovering above the relationship. So some part of them really gives in order to get. And if they don't get, rather than get angry at a partner because that would threaten the relationship and thus their attachment security, they might turn it in on themselves. And then they become anxious and depressed. And so true generosity is really not about giving without expectation of receipt so much as it is giving with the understanding that it need not come from a place of scarcity to be of value. So when you give to get, it's because you think that you have depleted yourself in some way and that the measure of your sacrifice makes you worthy. But when you are fully sovereign within yourself and you know that all of life flows through you with an endless supply, you are never depleted. And generosity becomes an expression of non-attachment to this minutia of life. So generosity becomes sourced from a place of abundance. And this doesn't mean that generosity eradicates all of our ego attachments. I want to give you a quote here by Sharon Salzberg. She says, "When we practice the act of simply observing our attachments through acts of generosity, they loosen. They become less opaque and less solid. In that place, we can find greater spaciousness in our great capacity for it. And if that can come from a place of self-care and endless resourcefulness, then that is going to shift an attitude of scarcity in any relationship." The last strength I want to talk about here is creativity. All those predictions and scenarios that you are dreaming up as possible outcomes to any number of variables, to any number of contexts and conversations you may be having with your partners are actually wonderful reflections of your capacity to visualize and then manifest those visions. And so your creativity to vision a new way to be in a relationship is actually going to be able to give you a blueprint of the kind of relationship for which you may not have had any models. So in fact, this is maybe one of the most important strengths that you have, because if you have no models for the thing that you want, you are responsible for visioning it. Okay. So developing a practice of shifting your mindset and your feeling states around love is probably one of the most creative endeavors a person can pursue, particularly someone who is an open heart.